Hello, y'all, and welcome back to another adventure time with the Texas Mom. I'm Sonia, the Texas Mom, and with me as always, I have the Texas Tornadoes, Carter and Logan.
What's up?
And we have a special guest with us today. We have the Texas Dad, Chris.
Hello.
So today's adventure, we chose something a little different. Normally when we go out, I choose somewhere that we go during the day. When I was looking into what state park we would visit next, that's in the area of San Antonio, without traveling too far, I decided to look at Old Tunnel. Old Tunnel is a park that is known for an old railroad line tunnel, and now it is inhabited by millions of Mexican free-tailed bats. So in the evening, all of these bats fly out of the cave. So I thought that sounds pretty cool. My kids were into Batman, thought we would check it out. So here we go. Since Old Tunnel is approximately an hour northwest of San Antonio and the bats don't fly out until after 8 p.m., I decided it would be best if we stopped in a small town along the way and grabbed some dinner before we got to the park. This way, no one was saying they were hungry right as the bats were coming out. My family and I had never visited this park before, so we almost passed it because we didn't recognize the entrance immediately. Also, the only restrooms available are porta potties, and you need to go before the bat viewing starts. There are no entrance fees charged at Old Tunnel State Park, but there are two observing areas, a lower and the upper one, which you first arrive to. The lower observatory costs $5 per person in order to be able to view the bats from that location. One neat thing about the upper observatory area was that there were lots of neat scientific things having to do with bats for my children to check out. Also, the staff was super friendly. If you do decide to fork out the $5 and go down to the lower viewing area to watch the bats exit the tunnel, it is highly recommended. You will not be disappointed. However, since it's a sensitive environment, they do not allow children under the age of 4 to go down to the lower observing area. You would have to be at the top. So that is important to know ahead of time. Also, it's a little bit of a trek down some stairs to get there. Also, this is not a park to take your dog to. Unfortunately, they do not allow pets in this area since it is a sensitive environment. Tunnel State Park. Behind me, that's the Old Tunnel. So that used to be a tunnel for the railroad to drive from Fredericksburg all the way into San Antonio. And it is no longer in business, been out of business, I believe, since the 70s, and it is inhabited by a huge bat population, I believe from the months of May until August. So if your kid is anything like mine, you're probably going to want to bring some bug spray. Anytime we would stop for a picture, it seemed like we were being swamped with mosquitoes, although we didn't really encounter that problem when we were at the lower observatory level. We had some time to kill between the time we arrived at the park and the time that the bats started exiting the tunnel. So we were lucky enough to be able to hit the trails that they have available at the park. There are only 2 and they are pretty small, but it still got us up and moving. Make sure to wear some comfortable walking shoes.
I just saw a huge big buck run across that way.
One thing you'll get to learn about me is I'm a total science geek. So I loved that the park had these little placards with the different types of vegetation that you can find growing in the park and telling you some information about them. It was pretty cool. was so much shade cover, it was really nice, and I didn't feel like I was constantly having to reapply sunscreen on my children. But also the sun was going down, so who knows, it could be a little bit different during the day. We learned a lot of information about the history of the tunnel and the park through the volunteer that was working and presenting at the lower observatory. It was very interesting to hear about. One of the things I did learn was that it did not go out of business in the 1970s. It was built in 1913 and actually went bankrupt in the 1940s, which was at the time World War II. So there is no evidence of the railroad even being there because you will not notice any tracks or railroad ties. All the materials were harvested for the war efforts. The bats take up residence during the summer months, approximately May through August, and that is when you can come and view them exiting the tunnel at one of the observatories. Since we are still under social distancing regulations, they are only allowing 10 people at each observatory level per viewing. Make sure you get your tickets in advance online. On today's adventure, we actually saw other creatures in addition to the bats we were expecting to see. We saw a friendly armadillo who decided to join in on the presentation, and also a walking stick literally dropped in during the presentation and crawled up the presenter's leg. And because I'm an educator, I absolutely love the fact that they have volunteers at each observatory level teaching us and educating us about the importance of bats in our environment, in addition to other facts and information about the park. It was very cool and a great way to pass the time as we waited for the bats to emerge. I cannot describe how cool this was to see this in person. This is something that you truly must go out and experience for yourself. The beating of the wings and the tornadic way that they exited the tunnel created a wind that blew on us for multiple straight minutes, in addition to being able to actually smell the presence of the bats. We had several fly overhead, but nothing got too close, and it really was not any kind of a concern. But if that's something that might freak your kids out, then you might want to stick to the upper level. And remember, no kids under the age of 4 anyway.
It's like they're trying to put on a show. They're still coming out. You can go down there.
By the time the bats were done exiting the tunnel, it was already dark outside, but have no fear, the pathway was lit, ready to guide you back up to the higher observatory and out to your car.
I like the old railroad because all the bats fly very close at the front. I like the old tunnel because we got to see all different types of wildlife, and we got surprised by unexpected guests like an armadillo and a walking stick, which was kind of cool. But the best part was the tornado of bats.
So we are finished here at Old Tunnel State Park. We got to see the bats fly out of the old railroad tunnel, and it was such a cool experience. It is definitely worth seeing. The park is super small, so I would definitely recommend, if you plan to visit it, you need to come at night to see the bats. If you enjoyed today's video, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. This way you do not miss out on any adventure times with the Texas Mom and the Texas Tornadoes. And remember, don't mess with Texas.